Marcus Cole had never considered himself a hero. He was just a cargo technician from Earth who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the right place, depending on how you looked at it. The trade station Valeth Prime buzzed with activity that afternoon. Thousands of alien species moving through its massive corridors like rivers of color and sound. Marcus had seen it all before, but it never stopped amazing him how small humans were compared to most of the galaxy's inhabitants. He walked through the market district during his lunch break, munching on something that tasted almost like a sandwich but definitely was not. The vendor had promised it was safe for human consumption, and so far his stomach agreed. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community. They had only made first contact 12 years ago, and most species viewed them as fragile little creatures with laughably short lifespans. Marcus had heard the whispers and seen the look spitty mixed with mild curiosity, like someone watching a small animal try to survive in a world built for giants. He did not mind it much. He had a job, a small quarters on the station, and enough credits to send home to his sister every month. That was enough for him. The market was crowded today, filled with merchants selling everything from exotic spices to illegal weapons hidden under tarps. Marcus avoided the shadier stalls and kept to the main path, his eyes wandering over displays of glittering technology he could never afford. That was when he heard the scream. It was high-pitched and full of terror, the unmistakable sound of a child in danger. Marcus spun around, his heart already pounding before his brain could catch up. He saw her immediately, a small Zarvathi girl, barely 3 feet tall, with silver skin and 4 tiny arms. She had chased some kind of floating toy into the loading lane, completely unaware of the massive cargo skiff barreling toward her. The skiff was a 9-ton automated transport vessel, and its emergency lights were flashing red. The brakes had failed. It was not slowing down. Time seemed to stretch and bend around Marcus. He could see the child frozen in fear, her large purple eyes locked on the approaching machine. He could see the bystanders pointing and screaming but not moving. He could see that no one was going to reach her in time. His body moved before his mind gave permission. Marcus sprinted forward with everything he had, his legs burning as he pushed harder than he had ever pushed in his life. The skiff was maybe 3 seconds away, 2 seconds one. He dove, his arms wrapped around the tiny alien child as he twisted his body in midair, pulling her against his chest and curling around her like a human shield. He felt her 4 small hands grip his shirt in terror. Then the skiff hit him. The impact was beyond anything Marcus had ever experienced. It was not pain at first. It was simply force, massive and absolute, slamming into his back and sending shock waves through every bone in his body. He heard things break inside himself. He felt his ribs snap like dry twigs. He tasted blood flooding his mouth. But his arms stayed locked around the child. They tumbled across the metal floor together, Marcus taking every hit, every scrape, every brutal contact with the ground. His vision went white, then red, then started fading to black around the edges. The skiff finally ground to a halt 20 feet past them, its engines whining in protest. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus lay on his back, staring up at the station's artificial sky. He could not feel his legs anymore, and breathing had become a wet, gurgling struggle. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading in a dark circle that grew larger with every heartbeat. But the child was crying, and crying meant alive. He managed to turn his head just enough to see her sitting beside him, completely unharmed except for a small scrape on one of her arms. Her purple eyes were huge with shock, tears streaming down her silver face. "Hey," Marcus tried to say, but it came out as a whisper drowned in blood. "You okay, kid?" She did not understand his words, but she understood his weak smile. Her 4 hands reached out and grabbed his arm, holding on tight as if she could keep him from slipping away. Bystanders finally rushed forward, their voices a chaotic mix of languages Marcus could not understand. Someone was calling for medical help. Someone else was shouting about the malfunctioning skiff. A massive Zovathi adult pushed through the crowd, her silver skin identical to the child's. When she saw the girl, she let out a sound that needed no translation relief, so profound it was almost painful to hear. She scooped up the child, checking her frantically for injuries. Then her eyes fell on Marcus, lying broken on the ground, and something shifted in her expression. She knelt beside him, her face inches from his. Her voice was deep and resonant, filled with an emotion Marcus could not name. "Human," she said, the words strange in her accent. "Why did you do this?" Marcus wanted to answer, wanted to say something meaningful, but the darkness was pulling at him now. His vision tunneled down to a single point of light, and even that was fading fast. His last conscious thought was simple and clear. At least the kid made it. Then everything went black, and Marcus Cole was certain he would never wake up again. He was just a cargo technician from Earth. After all, not the kind of person who survives something like this. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans for him. The Zorvathi woman stayed by his side as the medical team arrived, her hand resting on his chest, as if her touch alone could hold his spirit in his shattered body. She whispered something in her own language, a phrase that would change everything. "You saved my daughter," she breathed, "and now you belong to us." Around them, the crowd watched in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this before, a fragile little human throwing himself in front of certain death for a child he did not know, a child not even of his own species. The footage was already spreading across the station's networks, being copied and shared and sent to other worlds. By the time Marcus's heart stopped beating on the operating table for the first time, half the galaxy had already seen what he did. And when the doctors shocked him back to life once, twice, 3 times, they did not know they were saving more than just a man. They were saving a symbol, a story, a legend that would reshape how the galaxy saw humanity forever. But all of that was still to come. For now, there was only darkness, and the faint sensation of small hands still gripping his arm, and a child's voice calling out for her shield. Marcus woke to pain, not the sharp, screaming agony he expected, but a deep, throbbing ache that told him his body had been through something terrible and was still figuring out how to recover. His eyes opened slowly, struggling against the bright light above him. The ceiling was unlike anything on the trade station. It was dark, metal carved with intricate patterns that seemed to glow with faint blue energy. Where was he? He tried to sit up, and that was when the real pain hit. Fire raced through his spine, his ribs, his everything, and he collapsed back onto the soft surface beneath him with a groan that echoed through the chamber. "Be still, human," a deep voice commanded from somewhere to his right. "Your body is not yet healed." Marcus turned his head, the only movement that did not make him want to scream, and his heart nearly stopped at what he saw. 12 figures stood around his bed in a perfect circle, each one massive and armored in black metal that absorbed the light around them. They were Zorvathi, but unlike any he had seen before. These were warriors, and everything about them radiated deadly power. They stood over 7 feet tall, their silver skin marked with ritual scars that told stories of battles won. Their 4 arms were crossed over their chests in identical poses, and their purple eyes watched Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like prey. Panic flooded his system. He tried to scramble backward, but his broken body refused to cooperate, and he only managed to tangle himself further in the regenerative mesh wrapped around his torso. "Please," Marcus gasped, his voice cracking. I did not mean to. Peace, little one." The same voice spoke again, and one of the warriors stepped forward. She was different from the others, her armor more ornate, her scars more numerous. A cloak of deep crimson hung from her shoulders, and when she moved, The other warriors seemed to shift with her, like planets orbiting a sun. "I am Commander Thyra Calvorath of the Void Guard," she said, kneeling beside his bed so that her face was level with his. "And you have nothing to fear from us." Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process the words. The Void Guard, he had heard of them even in his short time among the stars. They were legends, the most elite warrior caste in the known galaxy, responsible for protecting the Zervathi noble houses. "Why am I here?" he managed to ask, his throat dry and raw. Thyra studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then something shifted in her eyes, something that looked almost like wonder. "You saved my daughter," she said simply. The memory crashed back into Marcus like a wave. The child, the skiff, the impact, the blood. He remembered holding her, remembered the feeling of her small hands gripping his arm. "The little girl," he breathed. "Is she okay?" Thyra's eyes widened slightly, and she glanced back at her warriors. Something passed between them, some silent communication Marcus could not read. "She is unharmed," Thyra confirmed, turning back to him. "Because of you. You threw yourself before a 9-ton vessel to protect a child you had never met, a child not of your species, and you nearly died for it." Marcus did not know what to say. It had not felt like a choice when it happened. It had just been instinct, pure and simple. He saw a kid in danger, and he moved. "Anyone would have done the same," he mumbled. "No," Thyra said, and her voice carried absolute certainty. "They would not. I watched the footage, human. I watched 100 beings stand frozen while my daughter faced death. Only you moved. Only you acted." She rose to her full height, towering over him, and placed a fist over her heart in what Marcus recognized as a salute. "You are aboard the Throne of Silence, flagship of the Void Guard," she announced. "You have been here for 11 days while our physicians rebuilt your shattered body. You died twice on the operating table, and twice you came back. 11 days. Marcus felt dizzy. He had been unconscious for 11 days. "The child you saved," Thyra continued, "is Yanara Calvorath, my only daughter, heir to a bloodline that stretches back 10,000 years. By saving her life at the cost of your own, you have invoked the oldest law of my people." Marcus felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. He did not like where this was going. "What law?" he asked carefully. Thyra's expression was solemn, almost reverent, as she spoke the next words. "The life debt," she said, "is absolute among my kind. You gave your life for my daughter, and though the physicians pulled you back from death, the debt remains. By ancient tradition, my entire house is now bound to you." Marcus blinked, certain he had misheard. "Bound to me?" "These warriors you see around you." Thyra gestured at the 12 armored giants. "They are not here to guard you from danger. They are here to serve you, to protect you, to ensure that no harm ever comes to you again." The words hit Marcus like a second cargo skiff. He was a nobody, a cargo technician from Earth who made barely enough credits to survive. He had no family except a sister he rarely saw, no achievements worth mentioning, nothing that made him special. And now he had 12 of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy sworn to protect him. "There must be some mistake," Marcus stammered. I am no one important. I just saw a kid who needed help." Thyra knelt again, and this time her hand reached out to rest gently on his shoulder. The touch was surprisingly warm, surprisingly careful. "That is precisely why you are important," she said softly. "In 10,000 years, only 3 outsiders have ever earned a life debt from a noble house. You are the 4th, and you did it not for glory or reward, but because you could not stand by while a child suffered." A small sound came from the doorway, and Marcus looked past Thyra to see a tiny figure hovering at the entrance. It was the girl Yanara. She looked healthier than when he had last seen her, her silver skin glowing with vitality, her purple eyes huge and bright. She wore a small dress of deep blue, and she clutched a stuffed toy against her chest with two of her 4 hands. When she saw that Marcus was awake, her face lit up with joy. "My shield!" she cried, and before anyone could stop her, she ran across the chamber and scrambled onto his bed. Pain flared through Marcus's body as she landed beside him, but he bit it back. He could not bring himself to push away a child who looked so happy to see him. Yunara curled up against his side, her small hands finding his arm just like they had on that bloody floor 11 days ago. "I told you he would wake up," she announced to her mother. "I told you my shield was strong." Thyra's expression softened in a way Marcus had not thought possible for such a fearsome warrior. "Yes, little star," she said. "You did." Marcus looked down at the child pressed against him, then up at the warriors surrounding his bed, then at the commander who watched him with something like respect. He was a nobody from Earth. He had no idea what any of this meant or what was supposed to happen next. But the small hand gripping his arm felt like an anchor, and for the first time since waking up, Marcus thought that maybe, just maybe, he had not made a mistake by surviving. The Zorvathi homeworld of Kethvoron was nothing like Marcus had imagined. He had expected alien and strange, but this was something else entirely, a planet of towering fortress cities carved from black stone, where ancient traditions lived alongside technology that made human achievements look like children's toys. 3 weeks had passed since he woke on the throne of silence. His body had healed faster than anyone expected, though the physician said he would carry scars for the rest of his life. Marcus did not mind the scars. They were proof that he had survived. Now he stood in the heart of the capital city, before the High Council of Houses, wearing ceremonial robes that felt too fine for someone like him. The council chamber was massive, built to hold thousands. Representatives from every noble house filled the seats, their silver faces turned toward the small human standing alone in the center of the floor. "Marcus Cole of Earth," the head counselor's voice boomed through the chamber. "You stand before this assembly to receive judgment for your actions aboard Valith Prime." Marcus swallowed hard. Thyra had assured him this was an honor, not a trial. But it was hard to feel honored when 10,000 alien eyes stared at you like you were a curiosity in a museum. "Footage of the incident has spread across the galaxy," the counselor continued, "and the facts are beyond dispute. You threw yourself before a 9-ton vessel to save the child Yunara Kelvorath, suffering injuries that should have been fatal. You asked for nothing in return. You expected nothing. You simply acted." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus caught fragments of conversation, disbelief, confusion, and something that sounded almost like admiration. "In all our history," the counselor said, "only 3 outsiders have earned a life debt from a noble house. The last was 647 years ago. Today, we recognize a 4th. The counselor raised his hand and the chamber fell silent. "Marcus Cole, by unanimous decision of this council, you are hereby granted the title of Kelthoran, He Who Shields. You are recognized as a protector of House Kelvarth with all the rights and privileges that title carries." The crowd erupted. Marcus stood frozen, overwhelmed by the noise and the lights and the sheer impossibility of what was happening. He was just a cargo technician. He loaded boxes for a living. From her seat among the nobles, Thyra caught his eye and gave him a small nod. Beside her, little Yunara was bouncing with excitement, her 4 hands clapping together in celebration. But not everyone in the chamber was celebrating. Marcus noticed a cluster of Zorvathi in dark red robes who remained seated, their expressions cold and hostile. At their center sat a male Zorvathi whose scars were different from the others, deliberately artistic, designed to intimidate rather than commemorate. This was Lord Varric Mordan, head of a rival house that had feuded with House Kelvorath for generations. Marcus had heard whispers about him during his recovery, a warrior of legendary skill. a politician of ruthless ambition, and a traditionalist who despised anything that challenged the old ways. The ceremony continued with speeches and rituals Marcus barely understood. By the time it ended, his head was spinning and his legs ached from standing so long. Thyra found him afterward, guiding him through the crowds with gentle efficiency. "You did well," she said. "Most outsiders would have collapsed under that much attention." "I wanted to collapse," Marcus admitted. "I just did not want to embarrass you." Thyra made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You could not embarrass me, Kelthorin. You saved my daughter. That is all that matters." They walked through the fortress city's winding streets, the Void Guard forming a protective ring around them. Everywhere they went, Zorvathi stopped to stare at the strange human in their midst. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now you rest," Thyra said. "You recover fully. You learn our ways. And you decide what kind of life you want to live as a member of House Calvareth." It sounded simple when she said it. Marcus almost believed things might actually be that easy. He should have known better. 2 days later, Lord Varric made his move. Marcus was in the garden of Thyra's estate, watching Yanara chase flying insects through the flowers when the messenger arrived. The Zorvathi male was dressed in the dark red of House Mordan, and his expression was smug as he delivered his scroll. Thyra read the message, and her face went pale with fury. "What is it?" Marcus asked, suddenly worried. "A blood challenge." Thyra spat the words like poison. "Lord Varric has invoked the ancient right to challenge you to single combat." Marcus felt ice spread through his veins. "Single combat? Against him?" "He claims your title is an insult to our traditions," Thyra explained, her voice tight with barely contained rage. "He says a weak human has no right to stand among Zorvathi warriors. The challenge is designed to humiliate you, and through you, my entire house." "Can I refuse?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "If you refuse, you forfeit your title and your life debt," Thyra said. "House Calvareth would be disgraced. My daughter would lose her shield. Everything you sacrificed would mean nothing." Marcus looked across the garden at Yanara, who had stopped playing and was watching them with worried eyes. She was too young to understand what was happening, but she knew something was wrong. "When?" Marcus asked quietly. Thyra's eyes met his, filled with pain and something like apology. 3 days, she said. "You have 3 days to prepare for a duel against one of the most skilled warriors alive." "Marcus, I am so sorry. I never thought he would do something this dishonorable." Marcus was silent for a long moment, his mind racing. He was not a fighter. He had never been a fighter. The only reason he had survived the cargo skiff was luck and stubbornness, not skill. But as he watched Yanara slowly approach, her small hands reaching for his, he knew he could not walk away. "Then I guess I better start training," he said. Thyra stared at him. "You would do this? You would fight a battle you cannot win." Marcus knelt down as Yanara reached him, letting her wrap her arms around his neck. Her small body trembled against his. "I did not save her just to abandon her now," he said. "I made a promise. Commander, I do not break my promises." Thyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she placed her fist over her heart in that warrior's salute. "Then the Void Guard will train you," she declared. "We cannot fight for you. The laws forbid it. But we can give you every chance of survival. We will make you ready, Marcus Cole, or we will die trying." Marcus looked down at Yanara's tear-stained face and managed a small smile. "Hey," he said softly, "remember what I told you? I am not going anywhere, kid." Yanara sniffled and tightened her grip. "You promise, Shield?" "I promise," Marcus said. He had no idea how he was going to keep that promise. Lord Varric had centuries of experience and the body of a born warrior. Marcus had 32 years of loading cargo and a stubbornness that bordered on stupidity. But as he held the child who had become his reason for fighting, Marcus decided that maybe stupidity would have to be enough. He had 3 days to learn how to survive. 3 days to find something inside himself that could stand against a monster. 3 days to become the shield he had promised to be. Marcus drifted in darkness for what felt like forever. There was no pain here, no fear, just peaceful nothing stretching out in all directions. Part of him wanted to stay, to rest, to finally stop fighting. But somewhere far away, he could hear a small voice calling his name. "Shield," the voice said. "Please wake up. Please come back. You promised, Yanara." Marcus clawed his way toward consciousness like a drowning man swimming for the surface. The darkness fought him, tried to pull him back, but he had made a promise, and Marcus Cole did not break his promises. His eyes opened. He was in a medical chamber again, wrapped in regenerative mesh, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed with alien technology. Sunlight streamed through a window, warm and golden, and for a moment he just lay there, marveling at the simple fact that he was alive. Shield. A small silver blur launched itself onto his bed, and suddenly Yanara was there, her 4 arms wrapped around him, her face pressed against his chest. She was crying and laughing at the same time. "You came back," she sobbed. "You promised, and you came back." Marcus lifted a hand. It took more effort than he expected, and rested it on her head. "I told you, kid. I'm not going anywhere." Thyra stood at the foot of his bed, watching them with an expression Marcus had never seen on her face before. It took him a moment to recognize it as tears. "You died again," Thyra said, her voice rough. 3 times on the arena floor, twice more in surgery. The physician said it was impossible, that no one could survive that much trauma. But every time your heart stopped, it started again. They could not explain it. Marcus managed a weak smile. "Human stubbornness. We are famous for it." Thyra shook her head slowly, wonderingly. "It has been 6 days since the duel. In that time, everything has changed." She moved to the window and gestured for Marcus to look. With Yanara's help, he managed to sit up enough to see outside. The fortress city of Kethvorin spread out below them, and even from this distance, Marcus could see something different. Massive banners hung from the walls, banners bearing symbols he did not recognize alongside what was unmistakably a human silhouette. "The footage of your fight has spread across the galaxy," Thyra explained. "Every species with access to a communication network has seen what you did. They watched a human stand against one of our greatest warriors and refused to fall." "I fell eventually," Marcus pointed out. "Yes," Thyra agreed, "but only after you won. And then you spared your enemy's life, an act of mercy that no one expected. The philosophers are still arguing about what it means." She turned back to face him, and her expression grew serious. "Lord Varric has withdrawn from public life," she said. "He is in seclusion, meditating on his defeat. But before he left, he did something unprecedented. He publicly acknowledged your honor and asked for forgiveness. He said you taught him something he had forgotten, that true strength is not about killing, but about protecting." Marcus did not know what to say. He had just been trying to survive. "There is more," Thyra continued. "The High Council has issued a proclamation. Humans are no longer to be considered a minor species. Your people have been granted full recognition as equals in galactic society." That made Marcus's heart skip a beat. "Because of me?" "Because of what you represent," Thyra said. "You showed the galaxy something they had never seen before, a species that will sacrifice everything for strangers. That will endure any pain for the sake of others. That will stand against impossible odds, not for glory, but for love. They are calling it human stubbornness, and it has become a compliment." She came to sit beside his bed, her massive frame somehow seeming gentle now. Messages have been arriving from across the stars, she said. Other species want to know more about humans. They want to understand how such small, fragile creatures can contain such enormous hearts. Your people will never be dismissed again. Marcus looked down at Inara, who was still clinging to him like she would never let go. This tiny alien child had become the center of his universe in just a few weeks, and he could not imagine his life without her. What happens now? He asked. Thyra smiled a real smile, warm and genuine. Now you have a choice, she said. You can return to Earth if you wish. We will give you wealth and honor and send you home as a hero. Or, she paused, and something vulnerable flickered across her face. Or you can stay, she finished. I have petitioned the council for the right to adopt you into House Kelvoreth as a shield brother. It is an ancient ceremony, rarely performed, but the council has approved it. If you accept, you would be family, true family, in every way that matters. Marcus's throat tightened. Family. He had not really had family since his parents died. Just a distant sister who sent occasional messages. The word felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Stay, Yanara whispered against his chest. Please stay, Shield. Stay forever. Marcus looked at the child in his arms, then at the warrior who had become something like a friend, then out the window at a world that had somehow become his. I think I would like that, he said softly. Thera's smile widened, and she placed her fist over her heart. Then welcome to the family, brother. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the fortress city, watching the sun set over the mountains. His body was still healing, probably would be healing for months, but he could walk now, and that was enough. Thyra joined him, moving to stand at his side. They were silent for a long moment, watching the sky turn from gold to purple to deep blue. I have a question, Thera said finally. One I have been wanting to ask since the day I met you. Marcus glanced at her. Go ahead. Why? Thyra asked, and the word carried the weight of genuine bewilderment. You did not know Yunara. You did not know me. You had no reason to sacrifice yourself for a child of another species. Yet you did not hesitate, not even for a second. Why? Marcus considered the question carefully. It deserved a real answer. Where I come from, he said slowly. We have a saying, you do not need a reason to help someone. You just need a chance. I saw your daughter in danger, and I could not live with myself if I did nothing. That is it. That is the whole thing. Thyra was quiet for a long moment. Your species frightens me, Marcus Cole, she said at last. Marcus laughed softly. Yeah, we get that a lot. Thyra turned to look at him, her purple eyes searching his face. I have commanded armies, she said. I have fought wars that lasted decades. I have seen courage and sacrifice in forms you cannot imagine. But I have never met anyone like you. You are not the strongest or the fastest or the most skilled. Yet you are perhaps the bravest soul I have ever known. Marcus felt his face flush. I am just a cargo technician from Earth. No, Thyra said firmly. You are a shield. You are my brother. You are a symbol to billions across the galaxy. But more than that, you are proof that the size of a heart matters more than the size of a body. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Thank you, she said, for saving my daughter, for teaching my people, for becoming part of my family. Thank you, Marcus Cole of Earth. Marcus did not have words for what he was feeling. So instead, he just nodded and turned back to watch the sunset. Behind them, he heard small footsteps approaching. Yunara appeared on the balcony, still carrying the stuffed toy she never let go of. Shield, she called out, running to grab his hand with two of hers. You have to see the stars come out. They are so beautiful from here. Marcus let her pull him to the edge of the balcony, where the first stars were indeed beginning to appear in the darkening sky. That one is called the Warrior's Eye, Inara said, pointing at a bright point of light. And that one is the Mother's Heart. And that one, she pointed at a faint star near the horizon. That one is called the Shield. Marcus looked at the tiny star, barely visible against the vast darkness of space. It used to be called something else, Thyra said from behind them, but the council renamed it after the duel. Now every species that looks up will be reminded of the human who stood against impossible odds for the sake of a child. Marcus stared at the star that now bore his legacy, and he felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like peace. He was a long way from the cargo bays of Valith Prime, a long way from the life he had known, but surrounded by the family he had never expected to find. Watching stars that now carried his story across the cosmos, Marcus Cole finally felt like he was home. Inara tugged at his hand. Will you tell me a story about Earthshield? About the humans there? Marcus smiled and lifted her into his arms, settling her against his still healing chest. I would love to, little star, he said. Let me tell you about a place called home. And as the stars came out over Kethvaran, casting their ancient light over a world that had welcomed him as one of their own, Marcus began to speak, telling stories of humanity to an alien child who had taught him what it truly meant to be human.